I would like to introduce to you Brent. His sobriety date is December 12th, 1998. His home group is Divine Intervention. Brent, passing you the mic. I'll see you on the other side.
Thank you, Christy. My name is Brent Norman Jr., and I am an alcoholic. And first of all, I want to say hello to all you beautiful miracles. And I call you beautiful miracles because you all are beautiful people. And you're all miracles. We're all miracles because any day that an alcoholic can stay sober is a miracle. And I usually say this at the end, but I'm going to say it now. And I love y'all, and there's nothing you can do about it. Uh, I'm going to tell you a little bit about me first. When when I was like 5 years old, my parents divorced, and I ended up going and living with my grandparents. And by the time I got into school, I was short, fat, and bald. My dad kept me bald because he gave me a cheap haircut. He didn't want to pay for a haircut. So, start my timer there. So, I was short, fat, and bald. And this in a day and age when longer hair was in vogue. And so I was mercilessly teased and bullied by my classmates. And I withdrew. I became a loner. I was uncomfortable in my own skin. I could not talk with anyone. I couldn't talk with any of my classmates. Didn't matter if they were male or female. I could not talk with my parents, my grandparents, or my siblings, or the few people who would have anything to do with me as a so called friend. I had nobody to talk to, nobody to share my problems with. So I internalized them all. And so I had social anxiety disorder. And that was the beginnings of my alcoholism because I had I had nothing, I had nobody. And when alcohol became available, all bets were off. See, when I was about 11 years old, I found my mom's fifth of vodka while I was helping her put the dishes away. I convinced her it was the thing to do to let me try it. So she poured me a shot glass. I tossed it off like it was a glass of water and immediately asked for another. Typical alcoholic behavior. And she said, "Son, you're going to grow up to be an alcoholic." And for the first time in my life, I had a goal. I had some direction. I thought being an alcoholic was something to aspire to. Well, in the next several years, alcohol wasn't readily available. But whenever it was, I did drink. And I would drink as much as I could. And when I got into the seventh grade, this guy that I knew would smuggle in little baby food jars full of booze, and we would sit in the back of the classroom and drink them. Um, I didn't care if I got caught. What's the worst that's going to happen to me? I get sent home, big deal. And he ended up getting caught, so the booze situation dried up. And I got into high school, and there I got connected with some people where other substances were readily available. So I partook of anything and everything until alcohol became available. And when it became available, all bets were off. And I would drink as much as I could, as fast as I could, to get as drunk as I could. And my my drinking was best characterized by the answer to this question. How many beers are in a keg of beer? Well, that's 15 and a half gallons in a keg of beer. Well, you'd think there's quite a few. Well, no, that's not the answer. The answer is one, and it's mine. That is the way I drank. I wanted to drink it all. I never succeeded, but I always drank as much as I could. And like I said, when alcohol was available, I didn't care about the other substances. When I was 19 or 20, a my boss's brother came into the restaurant I was working at and talked to her, and she came up to me and said, "Hey, you're just now getting off work. My brother has an extra ticket to the soccer game. Do you want to go?" And I said, "Yeah, sure." And so I went, and they brought in a cooler full of mixed drink. And so even though I was underage, I was drinking too. And I blacked out during the game. But I must have conducted myself fairly well, because the next day my boss came up to me and said, "Hey, my brother asked me to invite you to join the Portland Power Drinkers Club." Well, I said no. And the reason I said no is because I thought I would only be able to drink with them. That would cramp my style. I had fake ID. I could drink as much as I wanted, when I wanted, with whoever I wanted. I thought that I would be able to only drink with them. So I said no. That would cut back on my drinking. So eventually I crossed the line, and I started hating myself even more than I always had. And suicide attempts are a big part of my story. I made several very, very serious attempts at taking my own life. And fortunately, as y'all can tell, I did not succeed at those attempts. Uh, but that is that is the one thing a person can fail at and be a success. And when I crossed that line, I hated myself and I hated life worse than I ever had. And I drank until 87. And then I was out of state at a softball tournament. The temperature was over 100 degrees. So after a game, we went back to the motel. And there I discovered the greatest invention since sliced bread out at the swimming pool. And it was a telephone. Well, y'all are thinking, what's the big deal about a telephone, right? Well, the thing is, this telephone was a hotline to the bar. Ding, ding, ding. Seventh heaven for an alcoholic of my type. I loved it. I was ordering poolside service. And even though I had planned on going swimming, which is one of my favorite activities, one I learned how to swim before I got into kindergarten. Okay, that's one of my favorite activities. I spent the rest of the day drinking, and I had a breakdown. And fortunately, my brother was there. And when I had that breakdown, he 12 stepped me and he got me to go back to my room, stop drinking, stop drinking, go back to my room and pass out. And when I got back home, I ended up going to a meeting. And there I heard that I needed a sponsor, but I didn't know what a sponsor was. And I was too proud to ask. So I thought I would sponsor myself. And I thought that I had sponsored myself for the first three steps. But the thing is, I admitted I was powerless over alcohol, but I didn't know what that meant. I didn't realize that if I put one drop of alcohol into my system, all bets are off. And I will be right back where I was, being unable to stop drinking. So I didn't have that going for me. So I had no foundation in which to build the rest of the steps. And I didn't know that my life was out of control, that it was unmanageable. And so I couldn't admit that my life was unmanageable. And in step two, I said that I believed that a power greater than myself could restore me to sanity, but I didn't really realize that if you drank the way I did, if you make decisions the way that I did, you had to be insane. So even though I came to believe it, I didn't know that I needed to be. And then in step three, yeah, I made a decision. But the thing is, it's like the three frogs sitting on the lily pad. One of them makes a decision to jump off. How many are left on the lily pad? Well, the answer is all three, because the one only made the decision. He didn't follow it up with taking any action. And so the action of me turning my will and life over is steps 4 through 9. And I say that because it begins with the self searching, the leveling of our pride, which happens with step 4. Because I don't know about you, but if I wasn't in the process of turning my will and life over, I would not look at everything that I had done, my character defects, which resulted, my actions, which resulted in somebody else retaliating, consciously or subconsciously, mind you, which resulted in me having a resentment for them. So, in other words, all my resentments were of my own making. But I wouldn't look at that. No, I would just look at what you did. And then step 5, admitting to someone else what I had done. No, it's not like me to confess to anything. And then getting up to steps 8 and 9, you know, making a list of people that I had harmed and to become willing to make amends to them all. Oh, hell no. I don't do that. I don't care who they are. And then actually making those amends, you've got to be kidding me. Well, I wouldn't do that except for the fact that I was turning my will and life over. So because I hadn't done any of that, I did not have a defense against that first drink. And so after a total of 5 years, 2.5 without a meeting, mind you, I picked up that first drink. And I didn't have a resentment at the time. All that I had was a thought. And that thought was, you know, that sounds pretty good. I've always wanted to try that. I've always wondered what it tastes like. And the thought that it was alcohol didn't even enter into my mind. And I went and picked it up, and it was a beer. And I was off and running for another 5 years. And that 5 years was mental and physical torture worse than it had ever been. And then, after that 5 years was up, I made a decision which led to me going to prison for 12 and a half years. Talk about insanity. No rational person would have made that decision. And that decision, the decision to get involved in that situation, was something my dad had advised me to avoid like the plague, but I didn't listen to him. And that becomes important later on. So, anyway, I made that decision and I went to prison. I regret what I did because I cannot make direct amends to that person because to do so would injure him. It would cause a PTSD episode, so I cannot make direct amends. However, I am grateful for the time that I went to prison because prison saved my life. It got me to stop drinking, it got me to stop using other substances, and it got me to stop smoking. And I'm sure that I would have been dead by now had I not gone to prison. So I thank God for my trip to prison. And when I got out, I had planned on stopping at the first store that I saw and getting a beer, but that didn't happen. God had other plans for me. See, I had a relationship with God, and this started in prison. And it started because a situation arose with two family members being at odds. One wanted one thing, one wanted something totally different. And I'm the smartass of the family. So I came up with the perfect solution. And every night for about 2 months, until it was proven to be absolutely, totally, physically impossible, I prayed that my solution would happen. Now, God, in His infinite wisdom, knew better than to grant me my prayer request, but He also knew that given those exact circumstances, that I would start talking with Him. And when I start talking with someone, I build a relationship with them. And so I had a relationship with God. And when I got out, that thought of the beer was the farthest thing from my mind. And the thought of going to my PO, parole officer, and being the rebel that I had planned on being, telling her to kiss off, that I'm going to do what I wanted, and getting a sanction and going back to jail for a couple of weeks was the farthest thing from my mind. And I did what she suggested. And that was going into a halfway house. And there, they required me to go to meetings. And so I started going to meetings. And I had a friend from my first go around whom I had maintained contact with the entire time of my through my sobriety, my drinking, and my prison time. And when I got out, I transposed his phone number. And so when I called him, I got the wrong number. And one day in a meeting, I had the urge to go get a meeting schedule. I didn't need a meeting schedule. I knew the meetings that I had to go to in order to fulfill the requirements of the house I lived in. But I went and got the meeting schedule and I looked through it, and there at the very back is was a specialty meeting. It was called AA in the Woods. And you go on a hike in the woods, you get to a stopping point, stop, eat lunch, have a meeting, and then come back to the cars. And this was the last meeting schedule that my friend's phone number was printed in. He had his phone number printed in that meeting schedule. And so I called him and we got together and we went to meetings together. He became my sponsor. He took me through the steps and helped me to learn a set of principles which I do my best to live my life by. And today, because of those principles, I do have a defense against that first drink. And and that defense is, first off, it is God. It is waking up in the morning. It is praying as directed in the 11th step. But I carry it a step farther. And every morning, this is literally every morning, mind you, I ask for him to help me to stay sober this day because I know from my own experience, I cannot do this on my own. And like the big book says, we had to have God's help. Well, I know from my own experience that I have to have God's help. I cannot do this on my own. And then again, I have these meetings. I go to several meetings a week. Uh, I I host several meetings a week, and I do this because service is a big part of my sobriety. Plus, there's something else, and that is each and every one of you. You know, each and every one of you does something for me. You either remind me of the mental and physical torture of what active alcoholism truly is for me, or you give me hope that I can stay sober another day, or best of all, you both remind me and give me that hope. So each and every one of you does something for me. And that is why I'm not concluding now because I have a few sobriety stories to share. But I always conclude with, y'all can do this without me, but I can't do this without all of you. And what I mean by that is if you take me out of the equation, you all, as a group, will carry on and you will stay sober because you have that herd immunity. You have the alcoholism vaccine, which is the program of Alcoholics Anonymous. Whereas on my own, I will slip away from God. I will have slipped away from Alcoholics Anonymous. I will have slipped away from all of you, and I will slip back into that bottle. I know this because I have done it before. So I have two choices. Do I do today what I did yesterday to stay sober? I choose to do that every morning, or at least I have so far. I'll see about tomorrow morning in a few hours. But there is a definition of insanity, which is doing the same thing over and over and expecting different results. Well, to me, it would logically follow that doing the same thing over and over and expecting the same results would be a definition of sanity. See, I cannot stay sober on what I did yesterday. I can't stay sober today on that. I have to take action today. Now, if I do the same actions today that I did yesterday, I stand a very good chance of staying sober today. So far, I have chosen to do what I did yesterday. And, the exact things don't have to happen. Like, for example, yesterday, I think I went to 3 meetings. Today, this is my 5th meeting. It doesn't matter. I have prayed, like I said. I haven't done my exact sobriety routine, but it's been pretty close. And so far, it's kept me sober today. And I'm with my sister, who just so happens to share the same sobriety date, just a few years difference with me. That makes it all the much better. We're going out after this meeting for lunch, and then we'll probably go to an in-person meeting. No, but it doesn't matter because it's two sober alcoholics getting together to have a good rest of the day. And with that, I am going to share a couple of stories. One of which, well, because of the fact that uh, Bill wrote 14 or 15 times. Well, let me get to this first. The big book says selfishness and self-centeredness, that we believe is the root of our troubles or problems. I forget. I think it's troubles. So anyway, if selfishness and self-centeredness is at the root, then it seems to me that selflessness is a big part of the cure. And Bill, in the first 164 pages, wrote at least 14 different places about the importance of being selfless, the importance of thinking of others. And on page 159, this is the one thing I can quote other than bits and pieces of how it works. And that is, though they knew they must help other alcoholics if they would remain sober, that motive became secondary. It was transcended by the happiness they found in giving themselves for others. And my cat is attacking me. But so that to me speaks of selflessness. And he doesn't say giving themselves for other alcoholics, it's giving themselves for others. So I have to practice these principles not only between the Serenity Prayer and the Lord's Prayer, but between the Lord's Prayer and the Serenity Prayer, or in other words, the other 23 hours of the day. And because of doing so, I volunteered at an outside organization as a helpline operator, and people would call in and I would provide resources for them. And there was one point in time where I was assisting people in enrolling in Obamacare. And the procedure was somebody would call in and we would make an appointment for them, and then we would take care of enrolling them. Well, this one day, about an hour before the end of my shift, a woman called in and she had an urgent need to be enrolled right then. So I said, to heck with protocol, to heck with the procedure. I am enrolling her right now. What are they going to do? Fire me? What are they going to do? Dock my pay? Well, taking nothing from nothing still leaves me with nothing. So go ahead. And so I spent about 45 minutes with her, enrolling her in insurance. This was Medicaid because she wasn't working. And and so at the very end, and this was God talking, I said I was a recovered alcoholic. And she said she needed to stop drinking also. And I said, well, I'm going to a meeting tonight. Do you want to go? And she described the symptoms of social anxiety disorder to me. And and I said, well, I'll tell you what, if you show up, I will have a chair sitting right next to me just for you. She said, well, how will I know you? And I said, easy. I'll be the fat old bald guy with the cane. And she chuckled at that. And you know what? She showed up that night. And I introduced her to a few women. And she ended up getting a sponsor. And I went to a couple of her milestone meetings, just to show her some support that I hadn't forgotten about her. And she became like my sister. And um, she took me over to her sister's home so I could meet her brother in law and her nephew who was struggling with drugs and alcohol. So I met the nephew. Then she said, well, come out back and meet my brother and sister, my sister and brother in law. So I go out back, they're barbecuing, and the three of us look at each other going, where do we know each other from? Finally, I figured it out. We had volunteered for an event about 3 weeks earlier. So we already knew each other. And, you know, like I said, we went to a few milestone meetings together. And then on her 1 year anniversary, that very night, I went to her, excuse me, I went to her 1 year anniversary. And at her home group, they do not give out coins or chips or medallions, whatever you want to call them. And so I gave her one of my old 1 year coins, because she meant a lot to me. And that meant a lot to her. And and so unbeknownst to me, before her 1 year anniversary, before having completed the steps, pardon my language, some motherfucking asshole 13th stepped her. And that son of a bitch dumped her right after she got her 1 year of sobriety. And I say that because it devastated her. And 9 days after her one, her 1 year, she took her life. And that was nine years ago today. And it still hurts like let's see. I sponsor both men and women. But whenever I sponsor a woman, I make damn sure that they know that there is going to be nothing between us except for a sponsor sponsee relationship. There will be absolutely nothing else. And I don't care if they are married, single, LGBTQIA plus, whatever. everybody gets that same talking to, because there will be nothing between us except for a sponsee sponsor relationship. I will not be responsible for something like that happening to someone else because it hurts like hell. So, pardon my language earlier, but that is the honest way that I feel. And so, I hate 13th stepping. And I will tell anyone I see doing it where to go. I will tell them what they can do. And if they want to fight about it, so be it. I may get my ass kicked, but I will fight them over it. I will not let that happen to someone else if I can help it. And then another story. This is actually a good one. Okay. I was, I have, well, my vision periodically and unpredictably doubles. So it is not safe for me to drive. So one day, about 10 years ago, I was walking to the bus, and it's a hot August Saturday morning at about 6:30. I get to the bus stop. This guy walks up and asks me if he can sit down. I knew what he was going to do, but I said, yeah, sure, go ahead. And he sits down and he reaches into this bag that he has and he opens the top to a very large can of beer, probably a 40 ouncer, I don't know. And he starts drinking it and we start talking and he starts telling me some of his troubles. And because of having taken the 12 steps, and this is part of the ninth step promises, I had learned how to handle a situation which would have baffled me in the past. I started asking him some questions. He'd tell me a problem, I'd ask him a question. And these questions guided him to his own answers. I didn't give him any advice, I didn't give him any suggestions. I just let him answer the questions which guided him to his own solutions. And finally, he says, what are you? Some sort of social worker? And he takes a swallow of beer. And I laughed and I said, no, I'm a recovered alcoholic. And he spews out that swallow of beer and profusely apologizes, saying, oh man, I am so sorry. If I'd have known, I never would have opened this beer. And I laugh even harder. And I'm saying, no, no, no. It's okay. It didn't bother me in the slightest. And the bus shows up. And we get on the bus and we go our separate ways. Well, I was going to an AA clubhouse to volunteer behind the bar selling coffee and snacks and sodas and such. And the next day, I get up and at about 6:45, another hot August Sunday morning, I'm at the bus stop across the street heading the other way to go secretary a meeting. And this guy walks up behind me and says, good morning. And I turned to him and I said, oh, good morning. And the guy's eyes got huge. And he said, it's you. I've been looking for you ever since yesterday. Where do you go to meetings? It was that same guy. And because of my love and tolerance for him, because of the fact that I wasn't a witch hunter out for blood because he was drinking, but because I was loving and kind and tolerant, he might have wanted what I have. And he asked where I was going. And the bus showed up and I said, hey, I'm going to a meeting right now. And he kept on walking. But I would like to think that he did find a meeting and that he is sober today. I don't know because I've never seen him again. but I would like to think that. And it is all because of the fact that I am sober and that I have learned that it's not about what other people are doing. If other people are drinking, that is their business. My business is keeping me sober and sharing with you my experience, strength, and hope so that hopefully somebody out there will say, hey, I want what that guy has. I wonder how he got it. And in which case, I'm more than willing to share with you. And see, when chat opens up, I always put my name and number in chat. And I tell people, and this is what I say. I'm going to read it right now to you. It's my name, Brent Norman Jr., my phone number, which is +1 503 270 1767, and I'm on both WhatsApp and Telegram. And I'm here for fellowship and or support, available for text or calls. And then, most importantly of all, I'm available for everyone. Gender identity, skin color, religion, age, body shape or size doesn't matter to me. If you need help, I'm here for you. If you call, I'm here for you 24/7. I would much rather lose sleep than you. Please don't struggle or suffer alone. See, I have struggled and I have suffered alone. And I hate that feeling. I had no hope, not until Alcoholics Anonymous. And I know people in this program who struggled and suffered alone. And they have died from this disease because of that. And I know other people, the woman that I talked about, whose anniversary is today, who struggled and suffered alone. And she took her life. And I have talked with several people who were struggling and suffering and who had suicidal ideation. And I have given them hope. I have shared of myself and brought them into the light to where God worked through me to save them. And to me, I will do that for anyone because, like I said, I would much rather lose sleep than you because each and every one of you are that important to me. And I still have about 6 minutes left, but I'm going to end right there and say I hope you'll open up the chat so I can put that in there. And again, I want to say I love all of you, and there is nothing you can do about it. Thank you, Christy, for inviting me, because sharing my experience, strength, and hope is both a privilege and an honor. So thank you, everyone, for being here tonight.